The galaxy was vast, full of light and life, where thousands of intelligent species shared a fragile peace under the banner of the Galactic Council. For over 500 years, this council had ruled the stars, bringing unity after the age of endless wars. Every species contributed something. Some gave science, others wisdom, and a few gave strength. But humanity was different. The Terrans had joined the Galactic Council late, much later than most species. When Earth finally sent its diplomats to the stars, the galaxy had already built wonders: star cities, teleportation gates, and living ships that breathed plasma. Compared to that, humans looked primitive. Their ships used engines fueled by fusion. Their weapons were still based on kinetics. Their computers were decades behind in speed and design. So humanity became known as the quiet species. They traded, learned, and shared stories, but never showed much of their technology. The Council labeled them as peaceful observers. Nothing more. Then came the Council's Grand Exposition, a legendary event that happened once every century. It was where the greatest civilizations displayed their newest fleets, symbols of power, pride, and progress. Every empire competed to prove their superiority. That year, the exposition was to be held near the star Valus Prime, a system surrounded by glowing nebulae and massive orbital arenas large enough to hold thousands of ships. Invitations were sent across the galaxy, to the Zin Hive, the Vesh Dominion, the Aural Alliance, and hundreds more. The invitation reached Earth, too. No one expected the Terrans to respond. In truth, the galaxy barely remembered them. Earth had gone silent for over 2 centuries. Their colonies had withdrawn from the Council, their ships had stopped appearing at trading posts, and their ambassadors had quietly left the central worlds. To most, humanity had simply faded away. But then the unthinkable happened. One morning, a simple transmission appeared on the Council's secure channel. It was short, clear, and carried no emotion. Terran Fleet Command acknowledges the invitation. We will attend. The message caused instant confusion. Across the Council's network, alien delegates began murmuring. Humans? They still have ships? One of the Aural ambassadors asked with disbelief. The Vesh Dominion laughed. Attend with what? Their rusting metal coffins from the last age? Even the Council chair, an ancient being of light named Soren Valor, raised an ethereal brow. If they wish to attend, let them. Perhaps they will learn something from watching true fleets. And just like that, humanity was added to the list of attendees. Few took it seriously. Most assumed they would send 1 or 2 small vessels, maybe out of pride, maybe out of curiosity, yet, in the quiet system of Sol, something was stirring. Deep beneath the frozen surface of Luna, hidden within a sealed base built long before the Council even existed, Admiral Alara Trent stood before a massive holographic map of the stars. She was an older woman, with calm gray eyes and a posture that spoke of discipline and patience. Around her, dozens of officers worked silently, wearing uniforms that hadn't changed in over 200 years. The Council has finally called for another exposition, one of her aides said softly. They still think we're gone. Alara smiled faintly. Good, that's exactly what we wanted them to think. Another officer looked uncertain. Admiral, if we reveal ourselves now, they'll question everything. The obsolete fleet hasn't been activated for generations. Are we sure it's ready? Alara's gaze turned toward the viewport. Beyond it, in the distance, floated hundreds of silent shapes. Enormous ships resting within lunar dry docks, covered in stasis fields and dust. Each one carried old Terran markings, faded symbols of the United Earth Fleet. They call it obsolete, she said quietly, but they never understood what it really is. Her voice echoed through the chamber, calm and steady. Begin activation sequence. Wake them up. Across the Sol system, ancient signals pulsed through forgotten relays. Old satellites blinked to life after centuries of silence. On Mars, under the sands of Olympus Base, massive vault doors opened, revealing lines of dormant cruisers. In Earth's orbit, beneath the shimmering shield of camouflage arrays, the largest ship of all, the TFS Titan, began to hum. Engines that hadn't burned in centuries flickered awake. Artificial minds whispered in digital tongues long lost to the galaxy. The obsolete fleet was waking. Days later, the Galactic Council prepared for the grand event. Every civilization had already arrived. The Aural Alliance displayed their radiant star wings that shone with living light. The Vesh Dominion brought warships covered in plasma scales that could melt moons. The Zin Hive floated their living carriers, pulsating like giant hearts in the void. Each fleet was newer, faster, and more advanced than anything humans had ever shown. The exposition arena, a colossal ring orbiting Velos Prime, shimmered with activity. Delegates filled the observation halls, traders set up floating markets, and news drones captured every angle for galactic broadcast. Still, there was no sign of the Terrans. Hours passed. Some began to mock their absence. They probably got lost, one Vesh officer joked. Or their engines broke, another said with laughter. But then, without warning, the space above the arena rippled. A small distortion appeared, like a gentle ripple on water. Then another, and another. Within moments, a massive rift opened, not violent like a normal warp tear, but smooth, quiet, and controlled. Out of that rift, a single dark ship glided forward, gray, simple, and unmarked except for a small human flag near the hull. Its surface carried no glow, no energy field, no sign of advanced tech. It was plain. Then another ship followed, and another. The crowd watched in disbelief as hundreds of Terran ships emerged in perfect formation, their hulls old but spotless, their movement synchronized down to the smallest detail. Every sensor in the arena scanned them instantly, but the results made no sense. No energy readings, no drive signatures, no weapon data. It was as if the ships were dead metal. Are those real? Whispered an oral delegate. They look ancient, said another. How are they even flying? From the command bridge of the TFS Titan, Admiral Ilara Trent watched the arena on her main screen. The faces of thousands of species stared at her fleet, laughing, doubting, confused. Open a channel, she ordered. A calm tone echoed through the arena as her voice reached every corner of the Council's network. This is Admiral Ilara Trent of Terran Fleet Command. On behalf of the people of Earth, we thank the Council for its invitation. Today we present the obsolete fleet, a piece of our past and a message to the future. Her words were slow, measured, and firm. Many alien delegates chuckled quietly. To them, this was some kind of nostalgic performance. The humans were showing off their old machines to look brave. But deep within the Velos system, as the Terran ships began to realign, something subtle happened. Every Terran vessel emitted a faint shimmer, not of light but of distortion like a mirage bending space around it. The sensors of every alien fleet began to malfunction one by one. What is happening? The Vesh commander growled, staring at his console. I'm losing all readings. At that moment, Admiral Trent smiled softly. We call them obsolete, she said, because they are from an era when humanity learned that power isn't always in progress, but in understanding. The arena fell silent. Even the council chair, radiant and ancient, leaned forward in awe. In that quiet second, everyone, from the oldest species to the youngest explorers, felt something they hadn't felt in centuries: curiosity, and a faint creeping sense of respect. The Terrans had arrived, and they were not what anyone expected. The galaxy had seen countless ships before, enormous, glowing, and perfect in design, but nothing compared to the strange sight that filled the Velos arena that day. When the humans arrived, the entire event came to a silent halt. Their fleet stretched across the stars like a formation of metallic ghosts, silent, symmetrical, and unshaken by the laughter that echoed across the Council's broadcast networks. Every alien eye was fixed on them. Every sensor, scanner, and probe was locked onto those dull gray halls that looked like they belonged in a museum. Not a battlefield, but despite their plain design, something about those Terran ships made others uneasy. From her command chair aboard the TFS Titan, Admiral Ilara Trent observed the sea of alien vessels through the main viewport. She had seen recordings of the Council's fleets before. Radiant ships shaped like crystal birds, living vessels grown from biometal, and warships that moved faster than light itself. The Terrans had none of that. Their fleet was ancient, built from steel, titanium, and carbon. Their weapons looked simple, their engines quiet. But Ilara knew better. The Council only saw the surface. What mattered was what lay beneath. Fleet status, she asked calmly. All ships report operational, replied Commander Rao. Temporal shielding stable. External sensors reading interference from the Council systems, but it's not affecting us. Ilara nodded. Maintain silent formation. Let them look. Let them guess. In the observation halls of the arena, hundreds of alien diplomats and military leaders gathered. Floating holograms displayed each new arrival, their specifications and energy readings, except for the Terran ships. Every time a scanner tried to analyze a Terran vessel, the data feed glitched. Numbers turned to static. Power readings showed 0 even when the ships were clearly active. "This is impossible," muttered Zyrek, a Vesh Dominion tactician, his scales flickering in frustration. "Our scanners can map a neutron star's core, but they can't read human scrap metal?" "Maybe their systems are broken," said an oral scientist, trying to sound confident but failing. "No," answered the council chair, Soren Valor, his luminous form pulsing faintly. "Something is hidden. The question is, why?" The presentation began. The first empire to showcase its fleet was the Oral Alliance. Their ships shone like miniature suns, crafted from radiant energy that danced with color. Their flagship unfolded wings of light and created a brilliant pattern across the sky. The crowd applauded, impressed as always. Next came the Vesh Dominion, whose fleet thundered through space in perfect military unity. Their plasma scales glowed, their cannons hummed with controlled energy. They performed synchronized maneuvers, slicing through the vacuum with precision. The Zinhive followed, releasing hundreds of living drones that formed intricate patterns like glowing constellations. The air was filled with admiration and cheers. Then came silence. It was humanity's turn. "Admiral," said Commander Rao, "we're being requested to begin our demonstration." Ilara took a breath, her eyes steady. "Patch me through." A calm tone spread through the arena once again, marking the beginning of the Terran presentation. Her voice, firm yet composed, filled the halls. "This is Admiral Ilara Trent, Terran Fleet Command. We thank the Council for allowing us to participate. Humanity presents the obsolete fleet, a collection of ships once retired, now restored for demonstration." The alien delegates exchanged amused looks. "Obsolete fleet?" one whispered, chuckling. They admitted themselves. Even the Vesh commander grinned. At least they have a sense of humor. But as the laughter faded, something unusual began to happen. The Terran fleet didn't light up or charge weapons. They simply drifted, quietly, slowly, perfectly. Their movements were so synchronized that even computer-guided fleets could not match the precision. "They're aligning," said one oral observer in confusion. "Every ship, exact position, exact rotation. Why?" Then one by one, the Terran ships emitted faint pulses of light. Not bright or colorful, but steady and rhythmic. The pulses spread outward like ripples across water, reaching every other fleet. Instantly, several alien systems began malfunctioning. Scanners scrambled, coordinates shifted by micrometers, and targeting sensors failed. "What's going on?" shouted a Vesh technician. "Our readings are gone." "It's some kind of interference field," replied an oral engineer, "but it's not energy-based. It's rewriting space around them." Inside the Titan, Admiral Trent watched the chaos unfold on her console. Her crew remained calm, trained for this exact reaction. "They're trying to analyze us," said Rao, smiling slightly. "They always do," Ilara replied, "and they always forget the most basic rule of science." Rao tilted his head. "Which is?" Ilara looked out the viewport, her expression unreadable. "Observation changes the subject." The council broadcast continued, but now the spectators were silent. The laughter had stopped. The Terran ships began a maneuver sequence. Something simple at first, a standard formation turn. But the more they moved, the more impossible it became. The ships changed positions in perfect unison, as if each vessel predicted the other's motion before it happened. Their paths didn't follow any known physics. They would glide forward, vanish for a millisecond, and reappear kilometers away, still in perfect formation. The council chair leaned forward, glowing brighter. That's not conventional warp." "What are they doing?" "Quantum slip? Dimensional phase," suggested a scientist, shaking their head. "No, it doesn't match any known energy pattern." No one had an answer, and then came the moment that silenced the galaxy. Without warning, one of the Terran ships broke formation and accelerated toward a massive asteroid floating nearby, a leftover piece of rock meant for target testing. The asteroid was 50 kilometers wide, strong enough to withstand a direct plasma impact. The Terran ship didn't fire. It didn't even charge a weapon. It simply touched the asteroid, gently, and the asteroid was gone. Not shattered, not vaporized, gone. The space where it had existed was empty, smooth as if it had never been there. Gasps filled the arena. Dozens of alien ships moved backward in shock. What was that? Cried the Vesh commander. How did they? Before he could finish, the Terran ship returned to formation, silent as before. Admiral Trent's voice came through the speakers once more. Our fleet is old, yes, built from materials you would call primitive. But every ship carries a legacy, the memory of those who built, dreamed, and learned. Sometimes what you call obsolete is simply what you don't understand. In the Council's observation ring, the mood shifted from amusement to awe. Delegates whispered, trying to explain what they had just witnessed. Scientists ran simulations, all failing. They erased mass without energy, one muttered. That's impossible, said another. Humans have done the impossible before, whispered the Council chair quietly. Meanwhile, back aboard the Titan, the Terran crew maintained silence. The test had gone perfectly. Every ship in the obsolete fleet had responded exactly as predicted. Commander Rao looked at his admiral. You've just stunned the entire galaxy. Ilara smiled softly. No, we've only reminded them to keep watching. As the Terran fleet began its return formation, the alien spectators couldn't stop talking. Some called it a trick. Others called it ancient power. But one thing was certain. No one laughed anymore. The humans had entered the arena quietly and with a fleet they called obsolete. They had done something no civilization in the Council's history had ever achieved. They made every species question their understanding of science itself. When the demonstration ended, the Council chair rose from his seat. His glowing eyes focused on the simple gray ships hovering in perfect silence above the arena. He spoke through the universal channel, his voice echoing through every starship present. Terran Fleet Command, your demonstration was most impressive. We would like to request a formal explanation of your technology. Ilara Trent's calm reply came moments later. Of course, Council Chair. We will answer your questions in due time. But remember, even the simplest tools can hold the deepest secrets. The channel closed. The obsolete fleet stood silently, glowing faintly against the backdrop of the Velos Nebula. No one could take their eyes off them. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy's most advanced civilizations felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not anger, but respect. Because in that moment, every being watching knew the humans had returned. And whatever they had learned in their centuries of silence had changed everything. The arena of Velos Prime was brighter than ever. Thousands of ships from every major civilization floated in silent orbit, their hulls glittering under the blue light of the nearby star. The Galactic Exposition had reached its most awaited moment, the demonstration phase. Each empire was to display the full strength of its fleet, its speed, weapon control, and coordination. It was a grand show of pride and progress. The humans, standing at the end of the schedule, had already shocked the galaxy once with their mysterious arrival. Now every eye was fixed on them. Every species wanted to see what their so-called obsolete fleet could really do. Inside the Council command hall, the atmosphere was tense. Holograms displayed the participating fleets in real time, orbiting the Velos ring. Rows of delegates sat behind transparent consoles, while technicians worked to synchronize the simulation fields. Council Chair Soren Valor floated calmly above the central dais, his radiant form pulsing like a slow heartbeat. His voice carried through every hall and communication line. All fleets prepare for the demonstration round. Targets have been placed. Scoring will measure speed, precision, and efficiency. Begin in sequence, one by one. Fleets took their turns. The Oral Alliance began first. Their ships moved like glowing ribbons through space, slicing asteroids into dust with beams of color. The crowd applauded. Their technology was elegant and beautiful, almost like a dance. Then came the Vesh Dominion, their plasma cannons roaring like thunder. They vaporized their targets in bursts of light. Their movements were perfect, their confidence unshakable. The Zin Hive followed, deploying living drones that consumed debris and reformed it into geometric shapes mid-flight. The galaxy loved their display. The audience cheered and clapped, then the lights dimmed. It was humanity's turn. The obsolete fleet floated silently in formation, gray and dull among the shining ships around them. From the TFS Titan, Admiral Ilara Trent looked across the control screens. Her officers waited, calm and silent. The world was watching, but her expression never changed. "Simulation field is ready," said Commander Rao. "All systems stable." Ilara nodded. "Activate link." At once, the entire Terran fleet connected through invisible lines of data. Thousands of ships moved as one, forming a perfect grid, a geometric pattern that looked almost artistic in its symmetry. From afar, it didn't look like a battle formation. It looked like... "Art Terran Fleet Command," came the voice of the Council Chair. "You may begin." Ilara pressed a single control on her panel. "Initiate Phase 1. Across the arena, hundreds of drones materialized. They were the standard simulation targets used by the Council. Fast, unpredictable, and highly resistant to energy. The human fleet didn't open fire immediately. Instead, they simply floated there, waiting. Then, almost too suddenly to follow, every Terran ship moved. They accelerated not with visible thrust, but with a soft shimmer. One instant they were still, the next they were gone. Then they reappeared kilometers away, their new positions forming an exact replica of a fractal pattern known only to human mathematicians. Alien spectators gasped. "What was that?" a Vesh officer shouted. "They jumped without generating energy signatures," replied another. On the Council's main display, lines of light traced the Terran movements trying to follow their path. But the pattern broke physics itself. It didn't follow any known coordinate logic. The obsolete fleet began firing, but their weapons weren't the bright beams or plasma cannons the galaxy expected. They were simple, flashes of light, soft pulses that seemed harmless, and yet each drone they touched vanished. Not exploded, not burned, and simply vanished, leaving behind no trace, not even dust. The crowd fell silent. Every alien species, from the mighty Valor to the smallest trading guilds, watched in disbelief. "What? What kind of weapon does that?" whispered an oral scientist. "It doesn't create energy, it removes it." Back aboard the Titan, Commander Rao was almost smiling. "The drones are gone. Phase 1 complete in 9 seconds. Proceed to Phase 2, Ilara said softly. This time the simulation changed. The arena filled with virtual enemy fleets, copies of known warships from other civilizations. It was a combined force test, one that no participant had ever fully completed before. Alien officers began whispering again. "Surely the Terrans will stop now. That challenge is impossible." But the humans did not stop. Ilara raised her hand. "Begin full synchronization." Every Terran ship pulsed once with blue light. The next instant, the entire fleet vanished. When they reappeared, they were inside the simulation enemy's formation. Without firing a single visible shot, the enemy ships began disappearing one by one, as if erased from time itself. Gasps filled the air. Sensors everywhere went blank. The system couldn't even record what was happening. The audience didn't see explosions or destruction. They saw silence. Clean, calm, absolute silence. Within 30 seconds, the simulation was over. Council Chair Soren Valor's voice was slow and measured. "Terran Fleet Command, the simulation has registered full target elimination in 30 seconds. Can you confirm this was within your intended parameters?" Ilara's voice came back calm as ever. "Confirmed, Chair, the parameters were correct. We apologize if our methods caused confusion." The council chamber was buzzing with questions. Every scientist, every strategist, every diplomat spoke at once. "Confusion?" one shouted. "They erased every target without firing energy." "What are those ships made of? Are they using hidden temporal displacement? Did they just rewrite the simulation code itself?" The council's computers had recorded nothing. No power spikes, no energy readings, no data at all. It was as if the Terran fleet had never moved. A young Zin delegate floated forward, her voice trembling with curiosity. "Admiral Trent, if I may ask, what powers your fleet?" Ilara turned toward the holo camera, her expression thoughtful. "Curiosity," she said simply. "The power that built your worlds and ours. The one force that never grows obsolete." Her answer spread across the galaxy within minutes. Billions watched from home worlds, stations, and colonies. Some felt wonder. Others felt disbelief. But none could deny the truth. Humanity had shown something beyond understanding. Inside the Vesh command ship, General Zirek clenched his jaw, his tail flicking in frustration. This is a trick. They've used illusion fields. His aide hesitated. General, our scanners confirm no interference. Whatever they did, it was real. Zirek's claws tapped the console. Then the humans have become dangerous. But even as he said that, there was no anger in his voice, only respect. In the council chamber, Chair Soren Valor silenced the noise with a single gesture. His glowing form flickered softly as he spoke. Terran Fleet Command, he said. The council requests a live engagement simulation against all attending fleets. If you accept, we will see how your technology performs against the galaxy's finest. The room grew still. Every delegate turned to look at the hologram of Admiral Trent. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she smiled faintly, not proud, not arrogant, just calm. Request accepted. The entire chamber erupted with surprise. No species had ever accepted such a challenge. Back aboard the Titan, Alara turned to her crew. Signal all ships, she ordered. Set defensive pattern Sigma 9. Maintain time phase intervals at 3.2 seconds. Rao hesitated. We're going to face every fleet here. Are you sure we should? Ilara looked out at the stars beyond the window. Let them see, she said softly. Let them remember that humanity never stopped learning, even when no one was watching. Minutes later, the simulation began. Every alien fleet in the arena targeted the humans. Thousands of energy signatures lit up space like fireworks. Beams of light, plasma bolts, and antimatter waves rushed toward the Terran fleet. And then, all of it vanished. The energy didn't explode. It didn't hit shields. It simply disappeared into silence. When the light cleared, the Terran fleet was still there, untouched, unmoved. Not a single ship was damaged. A deep hush fell over the galaxy. The Terran ships began to move again, slow and graceful. They didn't fire. They didn't counterattack. They simply passed through the enemy formations. Wherever they moved, enemy ships stopped, frozen in place, sensors dead, engines silent. It was like time itself had paused for them. The simulation ended automatically. The system could no longer compute what was happening. The voice of the central AI spoke through the arena. Simulation complete. Victory, Terran Fleet Command. No one spoke for several seconds. The silence of space felt heavy. Then Chair Soren Valor rose again. Admiral Trent, he said slowly, you have shown us something beyond our understanding. The Council requests a full explanation. Ilara's voice came through one last time. Of course, Chair, we will explain tomorrow. Today we have only one message to leave you with, she paused. Never mistake quiet progress for weakness. What you call obsolete may simply be a step ahead of its time. The communication ended. The Terran fleet turned slowly and drifted away, fading into the shadows of the Velos Nebula. Their gray hulls reflected the starlight like silent ghosts. No one laughed now. The galaxy that once mocked humanity sat in silent awe, knowing deep down that something had changed. Forever. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The lights from 1,000 stars filled the great dome, reflecting off the crystal walls that surrounded the meeting hall. Delegates from every major civilization sat frozen in disbelief. The humans stood calmly at the center platform, their faces unreadable. The simulation had ended and the result was undeniable. The Terran obsolete fleet had defeated every modern fleet in seconds without firing a single visible weapon. The Vesh commander, still recovering from shock, leaned forward on the council table. His scales shimmered under the bright light as he struggled to speak. Explain this, he demanded, his voice trembling. How did your old ships erase entire fleets without energy readings, without weapons, without anything? Admiral Alara Trent looked around the hall. Her uniform was simple compared to the ceremonial robes of the others. Yet there was an air of quiet confidence in her eyes. She pressed a button on her wrist console, and a calm holographic projection appeared in front of her. A view of one of the human ships, glowing faintly against a black background. 210 years ago, she began slowly, humans reached a point where building stronger weapons stopped making sense. Every improvement only brought us closer to self-destruction. So we stopped advancing in that direction and started looking inward, into the structure of reality itself. The crowd murmured in confusion. Most species in the chamber believed humanity's development had halted long ago. But Alara continued, her voice clear and steady. We discovered something no one else noticed. The universe doesn't only have space and time, it has timing. Every event that happens has a delay, a rhythm like the beat of a song. And within that rhythm, there are gaps, tiny moments where reality is not fixed. We learned how to step into those gaps. A deep silence filled the room. Many delegates exchanged uncertain looks. Alara pointed at the hologram. Our obsolete ships are synchronized to those gaps. They exist half a second ahead of normal time. That is why your sensors could not detect them, why your weapons passed through them, and why your ships vanished when they tried to collide. A scientist from the Ixin Alliance, a species known for their high intellect, stood up with wide eyes. You mean, they exist in another time layer? Not exactly, Alara replied. They exist between layers, within what we call a temporal field synchronization. To the rest of the universe, they are invisible, intangible, untouchable. To them, we are slow-moving shadows. Gasps spread across the chamber. The concept was beyond comprehension for most races. The Valor Emperor, a tall being with luminous skin, spoke next, his tone cautious. You are telling us that humans have mastered control over time itself? Alara shook her head gently. No, we didn't control time. We simply learned to listen to it. She turned off the hologram and looked up at the stars visible through the transparent dome. While other civilizations chased power, we studied patience. We wanted to understand why the universe works, not just how. And in doing so, we realized that true power doesn't come from domination. It comes from understanding. The Vesh commander slammed his clawed hand on the table. You expect us to believe you built such ships only for a show of wisdom? That kind of power could rule the galaxy. Alara met his gaze calmly. If we wanted to rule the galaxy, she said, we would have done it centuries ago. The words struck the chamber like thunder. The Vesh fell silent. Even the proud Valor Emperor lowered his head. For the first time in centuries, the entire Galactic Council listened in quiet respect. Alara continued, her tone softer now. Our ancestors called them the obsolete line, because they marked the end of war-driven invention. These ships are reminders of what we used to be, a species obsessed with survival and fear. They are obsolete because humanity no longer fights for dominance. We fight for meaning. At the far corner of the chamber, a small blue-skinned delegate from the Rhinari Republic raised a trembling hand. Then why come back now? Why reveal this after so long? Alara smiled faintly. Because the galaxy has grown silent. You have peace, yes, but it is an empty peace, without curiosity, without growth. You have advanced machines, yet you forgot how to wonder. Humanity saw this silence spreading, and we could not stay quiet any longer. Her words echoed through the chamber like a melody, gentle but unforgettable. On the council's high platform, Chairman Veltar, an ancient being older than many stars, leaned forward. His wrinkled features showed both awe and fear. Admiral Trent, he said slowly, you have just shifted the foundation of everything we understand. Every law of physics, every power balance in this galaxy is now uncertain. What will humanity do with such knowledge? Alara turned toward him. Nothing, she said simply. We will continue to learn, to build, and to protect our home. We do not seek control, Chairman. We seek connection. Veltar's eyes softened. Then you are wiser than we imagined. Suddenly, the chamber lights dimmed as new holographic screens appeared, images from across the galaxy. Fleets that had participated in the simulation were analyzing their data. Scientists stared at broken graphs and corrupted energy readings. Engineers scratched their heads at impossible equations. And in every report, one phrase appeared again and again. Human ships beyond measurable reality. Alara watched silently. She knew this revelation would change everything. Humanity's return would spark both inspiration and fear, but that was inevitable. Change always came with both. A message tone blinked on her wrist console. It was from Fleet Command back at Earth. She read it quickly, then smiled. The obsolete line is ready to return home. She faced the Council one last time. We have shown you what we have become. Not to threaten you, but to remind you of something you lost. The courage to imagine the impossible. That is the true legacy of humanity. With that, she saluted respectfully, and her projection vanished as the human delegation faded from the chamber. Outside, above the glowing rings of the Council station, the Terran fleet prepared to depart. The gray ships, dull and silent, began to shimmer faintly. As they moved, the stars around them seemed to twist like reflections in rippling water. One by one, the ships disappeared, not through hyperspace, not through any known warp gate, but simply by stepping out of time itself. Alien observers watching from distant stations recorded the event in disbelief. To them, it looked like the human fleet had dissolved into the fabric of the cosmos. When the last ship vanished, only a soft echo remained in the radio waves, a transmission sent in hundreds of galactic languages. Do not fear what you do not understand. Learn, question, dream. That is what makes you alive. The message looped for several minutes before fading away. Back on Earth, inside the old lunar command base, Alara stood before a massive viewing window. The obsolete fleet hovered silently above the moon's surface, their hulls gleaming under the pale light. Behind her, a young officer spoke quietly. Admiral, the Council's reaction is spreading fast. Some worlds are afraid. Others are inspired. Alara nodded. That's expected. Change always begins with fear. The officer hesitated, then asked, Do you think they'll try to copy our technology? Alara smiled. They will try, but they won't succeed. Why not? Because what we built isn't made of metal or power, it's made of understanding. And understanding can't be copied. It must be earned. She turned back to the window. The stars stretched across the black sky like endless possibilities. Humanity had spent centuries hiding, learning, waiting. Now the galaxy knew they had never stopped evolving. They had simply evolved in a different direction. And as the Terran fleet entered silent formation above the moon, Admiral Alara Trent whispered softly, Let them wonder. It's the beginning of something greater. The stars blinked in agreement, and for the first time in a long while, the galaxy was filled with awe. The galaxy had never been so quiet. After the Terran obsolete fleet disappeared from the Velos arena, an uneasy calm spread across the Council's observation posts, research stations, and orbital cities. Every species struggled to comprehend what had happened. No one laughed. No one mocked. Humans, once considered primitive, had vanished again, but not before leaving the universe a message it could not ignore. On the Council station, Chair Soren Valar floated slowly through the central chamber. His luminous form dimmed slightly, reflecting a rare thoughtfulness. This changes everything, he murmured. Almost to himself, the Vesh commander, still reeling from the demonstration, leaned back in his chair. We were prepared for war, he said quietly, but the humans, they didn't even fight. They didn't destroy, they just existed in ways we cannot measure. A young oral scientist stepped forward, his voice full of awe. They have taught us something more powerful than all our fleets and weapons combined. They have shown us that knowledge and patience can surpass even the strongest power. Across the galaxy, similar reactions rippled through every civilization. Fleet commanders discussed tactics they had once thought invincible. Scientists argued over equations they could not solve. Philosophers debated how a species could achieve so much without ever firing a visible shot. The humans had left their mark not through violence, but through genius. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Alara Trent stood on the command bridge of the Titan, looking out at the familiar stars. The obsolete fleet was resting in orbit around the moon, their gray hulls silent against the black sky. Commander Rao approached quietly. Admiral, the galaxy will try to reach out to us. Some may want alliances. Others may try to copy us. Alara nodded slowly. Let them. Some will learn. Others will fail. And that is exactly as it should be. Rao hesitated. Are we ready for what comes next? Alara's eyes glimmered softly. We have always been ready. The galaxy just forgot it. The first signals from distant stars arrived within hours. Messages of curiosity, admiration, and even fear streamed toward Earth. The Zin Hive sent scholars to study the principles of temporal field synchronization, though their results were confusing and incomplete. The Vesh Dominion dispatched military strategists, but even the most advanced calculations could not predict Terran movements. The Oral Alliance sent diplomats, hoping to understand humanity's perspective before trying to imitate it. Every species had one question on their minds. How did humans achieve the impossible? The answer was simple but profound. Humanity did not rely on faster engines, brighter weapons, or stronger shields. They relied on observation, patience, and curiosity, a combination no machine could replicate. News of the obsolete fleet spread faster than any fleet could travel. On hundreds of worlds, young beings stared at the sky, inspired by a species they had once thought weak. Children asked questions they had never asked before. Why do humans explore? Why do they learn instead of conquer? Can we think like they do? Universities and learning centers across the galaxy began new programs. Entire fields of science were reborn as alien minds attempted to follow the human example, not by building bigger weapons, but by seeking understanding. Even the most ambitious rulers hesitated before making bold moves. The lesson of the Terran obsolete fleet had sunk in. Raw power was meaningless if wisdom was absent. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbit, Admiral Trent and her officers held a private council. "The galaxy is unsettled," said Rao. "Some will see us as threats. Others will call us teachers. How do we guide them?" Alara smiled faintly. "We do not guide. We inspire. That is all. Every species must learn their own lesson in their own way." She turned to the viewport, watching the stars stretch endlessly. "We will continue our studies. We will grow stronger, and we will always remain explorers first, because curiosity is the greatest strength of all." Months later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the aftermath. Every major civilization sent representatives to discuss the humans' return and the implications of the obsolete fleet. Chair Soren Valor opened the session with solemnity. "We have witnessed a species that has reshaped the laws of understanding. The Council must acknowledge that humans have earned a unique place in the galaxy, not by conquest but by their mind, their courage, and their vision." The discussion lasted for hours. Some species suggested alliances with Earth. Others advocated caution, fearing the unknown. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had reminded the galaxy of something it had lost long ago: the wonder of possibility. On Earth, life continued quietly, almost unchanged on the surface. Cities glimmered with familiar lights. People went about daily routines, unaware of the waves their civilization had sent across the stars. Yet deep beneath the surface, the Terran scientists and engineers worked tirelessly. They improved their understanding of time and space, refining their old technologies and building new ships not for war, but for exploration. The obsolete fleet remained intact, ready for future missions. But they were no longer obsolete in any sense of the word. They were a symbol, a reminder of the ingenuity and patience that had defined humanity for centuries. Across the galaxy, the impact of humanity's revelation grew. The Zin Hive began cooperative research with other species, inspired by the Terran example of knowledge sharing. The Vesh Dominion abandoned many aggressive strategies, focusing on observation and diplomacy instead. The Oral Alliance invested in teaching curiosity and creativity alongside technical advancement. Even minor civilizations looked up to humans as examples of what could be achieved when a species pursued understanding above all else. In a way, humanity had become the quiet heart of the galaxy, a force not of destruction but of inspiration. Years later, historians and philosophers would call that day the day the galaxy learned to wonder. Books, data archives, and holographic lessons were filled with stories of the obsolete fleet. Admiral Trent and humanity's patient genius. Scholars debated how humans had remained hidden for centuries while developing technology beyond comprehension. Children dreamed of joining Terran explorers in the stars. The humans themselves continued quietly, exploring, learning, and building without seeking recognition. Their legacy was not built on fear, but on the subtle power of thought and imagination. On the bridge of the Titan, now orbiting Mars, Admiral Trent watched the sunrise over the red horizon. The faint light reflected off the hulls of the obsolete fleet, casting long shadows across the barren surface. Rao stood beside her. "Do you think they will ever catch up?" Ilara smiled softly. "Some may. Most will not. And that is fine. Our job is not to lead them, but to remind them what is possible. Knowledge is a gift that cannot be stolen. It must be earned." She turned her gaze to the stars, where countless civilizations continued to watch humanity's every move. "We were underestimated once," she whispered. "We may be underestimated again. But curiosity is unstoppable, and that is why we will always prevail." The obsolete fleet stirred silently above the planet, ready for its next mission. Though the ships appeared gray, simple, and ancient, they carried a power that no laser, cannon, or shield could match. It was the power of the human mind. The galaxy, once indifferent, now watched in awe. Every species remembered that even a quiet, unassuming civilization could change the course of the stars, not through war but through understanding, patience, and relentless curiosity. And as Earth's fleets prepared to venture outward again, one thought echoed across the minds of every being who had witnessed that day. When humans call something obsolete, it may already be far beyond imagination. The stars shimmered, as if in agreement. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, the obsolete fleet glided silently onward, carrying humanity's quiet, enduring legacy into the future.